Hello, and welcome back to the Vineyard. This is Pastor Chris Deknatel here in Murrieta, California, and I want to start with a joke. I've tested this on a few people, and they said it was okay. So if it's not appropriate, then just stop listening. There was a farmer, and he went to the town with his truck to get repairs. And while he was there, it was going to take too long, and he was tired of waiting. And he says, "I'm going to walk on home. I'm not that far away." And so on the way home, he passed the hardware store, and he picked up a can of paint and a bucket that he needed. And he went a little bit further, and as he was headed down, he passed the feed store, and he remembered that he needed another chicken and a goose for his farm. And so he bought the chicken and the goose, and he walked outside, and he went a few steps, and he sat it down. He's like, I can't carry all this. What am I going to do? And with that, a little old lady comes walking by, and she says, "Excuse me, sir." She says, "Could you help me find Meriwether Avenue?" And he said, "Well, sure." He said, it's right on the way, actually." He says, "I live right around the corner from that." He said, "We can walk together. But I have a problem." He says, "I have all these things, and I can't carry them all." And she says, "Well, let me tell you, it's quite simple." She says, "Take the can of paint, put it inside the bucket, and put that in one hand. Put the chicken under your arm, and put the goose in your other hand, and you can manage them both." He goes, "That's a great idea." And so he goes and he does that, and they're walking along. And soon as they get close to home, and he says, "If we cut through this back alley," he said, "that there's a shortcut, and it'll get to where you need to be, and then I can go down the road a ways to my house." And she says, "Well, sir, I'm a little old lady." And she says, "I don't know you very well. What's to say you won't, grab me and have your way with me?" And he says, "Lady," he said, "come on, what am I going to do? I have a chicken, a goose, and a can of paint and a bucket." She said, "I don't have any hands left." And she goes, "Well, what you do is you put the goose down, you put the bucket on top of the goose, you put the can on the paint to hold down the bucket." And she says, "And I'll hold the chickens." See, hopefully you're laughing and not being critical. You see, the lady, implied she didn't want to be hurt, didn't want to be molested, but yet, was hoping for it anyway. I mean, how many of us do that in our life? We don't really ask for what we want or need. And in Ecclesiastes, as we continue this study, it talks about, that two are better than one because they have a good return for their work. If one falls down, his friend can help him up. But pity the man who falls down has no one to help him. Also, two can lie together, keep warm, and though one may overpower, two can defend themselves, and a cord of three strands is not easily broken. She wasn't able to ask for what she wanted, as crass as that joke may be. We don't ask for what we want very often, do we? I mean, think about it. How many times do we need or want something, and we don't ask for it? We don't say, "Hey, I need help with this or that." And I started exploring that for myself, and I know it in myself. Like, for example, I don't always know what I'm doing. I'm working on a project with these home repairs, and I'm Googling it as I go along. And I don't want to reveal it to anybody else, that they would see that I don't have any idea what I'm doing. And so, I do these things, and if somebody's there, they're going to know what happened and going to know how it all turns out. And so they're going to say, "This guy doesn't know what he's doing." So sometimes I don't want help because I don't know what I'm doing. Other times, I like doing it myself. I like to have a sense of accomplishment. When you get done, you say, "Hey, I built this thing," or "I did that." And I don't know that there's something wrong with that per se. Sometimes we have poor me, don't we? And we want to do it ourselves so we can blame everybody for not helping us. Seldom for me, but it is true. There's those days when I just do it myself and then gripe about it because I did it myself. And then there's those times when it makes us feel beholden to somebody, when they're going to help you, and then you feel like you got to help them back sometime later. There's paybacks, and who wants that? So we begin to feel guilty or responsible or accountable. And then, of course, there's always, they might criticize what we're doing. That maybe we didn't do it right. I had that the other day. I did something, and someone came in and tore it all apart and said, "He doesn't know what he's doing." And I was like, "Okay, well, I was trying to do something. Sorry." So you worry about those who criticize you. Why is it so hard for us to accept help from other people? I think that's why Lutheranism is so hard, and why the other theologies become more popularized. Because you get to do something. You get to feel like you had a responsibility in some way. I accepted Jesus. I'm doing these things at church. I'm earning these things. I'm working this way. God will love me more if I have this in my life. And so I can see why the idea of free gift and grace and love and forgiveness without any reason for getting it might be a little hard for us to take in. But our God calls us to just that very thing. He calls us to that relationship, that we would, to take that opportunity to let him in to our life. We do it in Sunday school. I hear this a lot of times in Sunday school and youth where they say, oh, I can't do that. He said, what if they ask me questions? Well, then you figure out a way around it, right? But you do it anyway. You still get out there and do it because it's an opportunity. It's an opportunity to do what someone has asked of you and to willingly want to do it. And then maybe even ask other people to help, that we might do this together. That's the part I think is the hardest for us as Christians at times. To feel we're forgiven, to feel we're loved, to work, to serve, to initiate, as I talked about last week, a new ministry, for all those reasons. And God calls us to that very ministry. And he does it because in the midst of that, we see him. And I mentioned this last week, and I just want to emphasize little points I make into making them bigger points. And that, you see, when I do something, I know God is working inside of it because I have to let go to God to do it. And then I see him. And I can tell you that God is helping me preach the sermon. Oh, God wrote this Bible study. God gave me this podcast. And you'll go, yeah, sure, whatever. You looked it up and you came up with an idea. But I know the process. I know what I felt and saw. And for me to explain it to other people is really difficult to do until that person experiences. And when that person has an experience with you, then you can talk to them and you say, yeah, God gave me this opportunity to do this. Yeah, I know. I had the same opportunity. I know how God works. And you see, we learn and we grow in our faith because then we see God and we're like, no, there's no way I could have done this. There's no way this was me. I know this was something outside of myself. I know it was God. And that's where we see him. We learn and we grow and we train and we learn things about God in reading the scriptures. But it's when we put that to work, when we utilize it, that we see God in the midst of it. Because we'll know that, look, I wanted to do this thing. I like for me, I prayed for a van. We needed a vehicle to transport all of our equipment back when we first started up. And I prayed, that we needed this vehicle. And on Sunday morning, this person walks up to us and say, hey, Chris, I know you're starting this new church. Could you guys use a van? I'm like, I was just praying for that. Now, some of you say that was coincidence. Maybe they heard somebody talk about it or knew it or whatever, but that's not what they said. And the van was in great shape. It was not a bad van. It was not falling apart. And it got us through the early years and getting our sound equipment up to Murrieta from Escondido. And so I tell you that story, and you may not resonate to seeing its power. But when it happens to you, you'll know. And you see, your faith will become secure. You'll see, like, yeah, there is a God. We stand on the sidelines and pray these little prayers like, oh, God, don't let me get sick this weekend. And then I didn't get sick. And you're like, oh, thanks, God, I didn't get sick. And then down the road, you start thinking, well, I didn't get near anybody. I've been taking my vitamins. It really wasn't God. It's when we're involved with God in things that we really see him. And I want you to see him, because when you see him, then you will strengthen your faith. And in strengthening your faith, you will not fall away. And you will flourish as a Christian, which is all I really care about, is that you flourish and are able to sustain your faith, and through perseverance, as God creates a character and a hope that is unbelievable. A hope that says, I'm not afraid to die anymore. I'm not afraid of things that the world dishes up, because I know God. I've been in communion with God. I've felt his presence and his power in my life in a way that it couldn't happen any other way. And so today, I call you into that same verse we've been using, talking about Ecclesiastes and the harvest time, and looking at that same concept where a threefold cord is not easily broken. No, because in that we begin to see God. And in that our faith is strengthened. Solomon didn't know those things, but we know those things. And I ask you to consider that this day, how you might let God in on your life a little bit. Even though you know you need it, you want to ask for it, but don't. Just let him in. Not necessarily have to act, but let him work in your life and watch how he manifests in your life. And for that, I pray you'll get excited about being one of God's servants and will love what you do and who you are and who you do it with. And so, my dear friends, today, I pray that as we work and we serve and we sow and we reap, that in that we let God have his moment in our life, that we might see him and know him more fully. This is Pastor Chris Deknatel here at Promise Lutheran Church, Murrieta, California, at the Vineyard. And I pray you share this message with others and get other people to watch, pass the word, and that we'll keep working at meeting your needs in faithful devotion to our Lord. You guys have a great week, and I'll see you next week. God bless.